Welcome to Podcast on TechNation. This is a series of podcasts focused specifically on the biomedical and HTM industry. Episodes will be added monthly. Listening to each episode is eligible for 1 CE credit from the ACI. At the conclusion of this episode, you'll be able to access a link that will take you to a quick survey. You'll be able to download your certificate once you submit the survey. Before we begin today's podcast, I'd like to invite you to save the date for our fall MD Expo. We'll be in Orlando, Florida from October the 29th to the 31st. Please visit mdexposhow.com for event details and registration information. Podcast on TechNation would like to thank our sponsor, Multi-Medical Systems. When you're in the business of protecting the health of patients, you don't have time for malfunctioning medical equipment or dull surgical instruments. You need a reliable partner that can provide expert repair and planned maintenance to ensure you have patient-ready equipment that meets or exceeds OEM guidelines and regulatory requirements. For more information, visit multimedicalsystems.com. In this episode, we are joined by Bill Degg, Project Manager at John E. Green Company, and he will be discussing learning marketable skills as a biomed.
Welcome back to HTM Insider. Gosh, it's always great when we get new exciting guests on this podcast. Today, as you know, I'm your host, Sherelle with Multi-Medical Systems, but I have a new friend. We connected on LinkedIn, and I found what he was doing was very interesting, and I think you guys might like it too. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my new friend, Bill. Bill, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Bill Degg, operating currently out of the Lansing, Michigan area. Been going on 15 years now in the industry. Been doing biomed to some extent since I was 15 years old, which we can get into, which is a very weird part of my story. But excited to be here and share how I got to this point in my life with you guys.
Yeah, and talking about your story, all the things that you manage and handle is not the traditional biomed role. It's not something that I think a biomed is looking for. But let's start when you were 15. How did you get into this industry?
It just started as the need for spare cash. My aunt worked for a home medical equipment company in the Detroit area. And she said on a Labor Day weekend vacation that if I wanted a job, I just needed to stop by. They hired in the warehouse all the time. And literally the following Tuesday, walked in there and they handed me a t-shirt and I signed 2 forms. And next thing you know, I was working for a medical equipment company. And that started, that was tough. Every day after school, 5 days a week. And we were big into hospice. So we had a high turn in DME and it was used DME when it came back. So my job was to walk into a mountain of soiled, durable medical equipment and Lysol it and power wash it and dry it and get it back on the shelf for the next day's runs. That is where I met my first mentor in life. Jeff Ruiz was my boss. He was overseeing the whole back half of that operation, biomed, respiratory, delivery services, warehouse. And he actually guided me, got me right away changing my classes at school. As soon as he realized I had a little bit of a ability to fix things, I dropped CAD and walked away from this dream of being an auto manufacturer, which is, a big line of work in Detroit. That's what a lot of men and women go into. And next thing you know, my junior and senior year, I'm going 3 hours a day, every day to vocational school for electronics and earning college credits, and walked away from there, went to Schoolcraft College, which is the prominent biomed college in Michigan, in Livonia, Michigan. That's what that was being ran. I believe he's in his last year or two of running it, if he's not already done. Chris Peters was the professor over the biomed program at Schoolcraft. And, again, amazing mentor. So there's a little bit of a theme in my life. I keep bumping into guys that took me under their wing and, realized that I was a little bit of a free spirit, didn't have a lot of direction, but was willing and had a lot of energy. So they just kept pointing me like a good bird dog, maybe in the right direction. And, all through school, 5 days a week, going to the warehouse. As soon as I got my driver's license at 16, I was making runs on my own, doing deliveries all throughout Metro Detroit. And then by 18, I started the Schoolcraft program, and I slipped right into the Biomed role. So they basically were using interns to do most of the Biomed under Jeff's oversight. So I got the opportunity to call myself a Biomed at 18 years old while I was earning my degree. So I'd work all day, go to school all night, worked a lot of weekends, had to, live that lifestyle for quite a while. And in 2009, got my degree. Unfortunately, had to leave that company, but it ended up being really good. I left for a while. I'm not sure if you're familiar. You're familiar with Mira, the Medical Equipment Repair Associates?
Yes.
I worked for them under Tyler Bioengineering out of the Mid-Michigan area. And really cool experience. Got to travel, as you know, those guys get to travel the country. You go to all the manufacturers for training. I got to go to the Netherlands for training.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like Seattle, Chicago, Rhode Island, Netherlands, couple more boring places, but it was really cool. You're meeting lots of people. I was 21,
Wow.
22 when I was doing that. I couldn't rent a car. I know that. It was still when you had to be 25 to rent a car.
You still have to be 25.
Okay, so I wasn't sure because I can rent cars now, but I know it was like a issue for my organization. They're like, well, we need to send you to Seattle, but you're going to have to bum a ride with this guy because you can't ride your own car. So that was really good. I kept my foot in the door with Home Care of Michigan, which is where I started. And Jeff ends up moving on, and they end up needing a licensed biomed. So I still lived in that town. I was still hanging around. I was doing some freelance punch in and set CPAPs and BiPAPs and get those orders ready and do their shipping for them whenever I was free, because I was with Mira, you're just waiting for a call most of the time to go run a service call for your assigned area. And they offered me to come back as a salary employee and lead the Biomed effort, and that quickly spun within months to, hey, Jeff left a bigger hole than we thought, and I got the opportunity to lead the warehouse and delivery and respiratory and Biomed at 22 years old, which was crazy. But there was a lot of people there, a lot of good mentors that could help me oversee it. There was an experienced team, a senior team, and that started my foray into leadership. And I spent a couple of years being a leader there. And then 2013, Jeff called again and said, hey, I got a spot I need you to apply to. Happened to be 90 minutes away from my house in Lansing from Detroit. And it was for Aramark. And I took that role at a prominent hospital in Lansing as the manager of Biomed. And then I was all over again. I was a guppy in the ocean because I came from home medical and I came from third-party repair. I was not used to walking the halls of a hospital. The hospitals I went into, I went straight to my piece of equipment and I went straight back out. I was not responsible for what ended up being 21,000 lines of equipment before I was done. Bumped into a great mentor again. The guy that hired me there, the director, was a career biomed, had worked all over the country. That's kind of what happens when you want to make a career with an Aramark or a GE or one of those third-party companies, a Sodexo. You bounce around if you want to raise up, unless you're really lucky. I mean, some guys get lucky and there's legacy accounts that are 30 years old and do their whole career there. But if you want to move up, you usually got to move around. And that's what led to me being able to be the director. Is Jim raised his hand one day in his office and said, Bill, see you later. I'm going back to Tennessee. What are you talking about? So I fought really hard. I was really young. I was 27 years old when he left. About 20, I want to say it was around 2015, 2016. And I fought and made an argument that I should have a shot at the director, and crazily they gave it to me. And I ended up with another fabulous mentor, the chief technology officer at that time, Sulab Stravastava. Just what an amazing man. He was an MBA. He was with an IT background and just took all those sharp edges of mine, smoothed them right out, and helped me with my technical writing, my ability to write memos and executive communications, and my ability to work through strategy and think 2, 3, 4, 5 years out. and set the table for those types of things and be patient, which I wasn't. Still am not very patient, but he brought me a long, long way. And then, so I enjoyed the director of Biomed role at that hospital until 2018. Sparrow tapped me on the shoulder, and I had expressed wanting a change, and it was more to do with when you're a third party for a long time, you have two bosses the whole time, right? You have your site boss, the customer is your boss, and then you have your actual boss that signs your paycheck and does your review. In this case, it was Aramark. And I don't want to say I struggle with leadership, but I definitely wasn't enjoying having two competing interests all the time. So when Sparrow asked me if I would be interested in their facilities team, I made the move over to Sparrow Direct. It made sense for my life. I wanted to grow and be promoted, but as I said, the next step was travel for Aramark. You had to be a regional guy, district manager, and we had a young family. I had little kids, kindergartners, preschoolers. I wasn't interested in traveling 2-3 days a week even. So took a big leap, made the move, and I got to keep Biomed in my life, because what ended up happening is I was in charge of plumbing and HVAC for the hospital at that point. But then also what came full circle within a year is they had the Biomed contract that I used to be a part of then report to me. So then I was a Sparrow employee managing the contract.
What a story.
That's my story.
That's an amazing transition from home health, cleaning, right?
Yeah.
And then moving up the ranks. And I didn't know that about Jeff. I didn't know he started in home health. That's an amazing story in itself.
20 years he spent there.
Wow. And now you're in facilities. Now, did you know anything about facilities? I mean, did you know anything about HVAC, or did you learn that along the way too?
Like I said in my interview that day when they asked me, I said, as long as my prerequisite is that my dad's a plumber, then it works, because that was as close as I was to anything facilities. I'd spent my whole life in medical equipment, like I just laid out. I never had any other jobs. From 15 years old on, it was all medical equipment all the time.
So are you any way responsible for recruitment now for Sparrow? Is Sparrow still an ISO Biomed organization, or are they in-house? And what role do you play in that? So
I actually left Sparrow last year.
Okay.
And
where are you at now?
I took a deeper dive into the facilities world. And I went to a contractor who is specializing in mechanical. So HVAC and plumbing is the thing we specialize in. And we build really, really large buildings, and specifically also focusing on hospitals, healthcare, things like that, laboratories, pharmaceutical facilities, and then any and all commercial things in between. But we also have a large repair arm all the way down to coming to find out why your house or your commercial building isn't heating or cooling, or fixing a leaking toilet. We'll do everything. But it's John E. Green is the company, and I'm at the Lansing office. So the greater Lansing area is our territory now. One of the coolest jobs I'm on right now is actually building an expansion hospital for a prominent healthcare system in Michigan right now.
What an amazing career. So it's great to dive into like what you've seen, and where you can go in the biomed industry, that you're not just, it's not just a pigeonhole. What do you feel has helped you through your education and your experiences to grow in this industry? Maybe take a left turn here or there, but what has helped you through the biomed career field get where you are today?
My story is kind of laden with me raising my hand a lot and saying, I'll do that. And particularly it was for leadership reasons. I learned pretty quickly, after getting my degree, I would much rather manage the people problems than fix the equipment problems. I'm the first person to admit that I was really good at troubleshooting. I would be there. I could find the problem as fast as any other technician, but it took me twice as long to implement the repair. And I always just tell people, my hands just do not do what my brain is telling them to do sometimes. And I don't know what it is. I have no answer for you other than that's just a fact. When we were in high school doing those electronics competitions, my school would go to states and compete, and my breadboard would work and my lights would light up and my counter would count, but mine looked like you dumped a strainer full of spaghetti on it. When the kid next to me had like the most perfect OCD 90-degree angles and color coded and everything was the same length, and that always got me marked down. So I always think like my whole life it was always like that. But I like to coach people and have coached people along the way. There's two ways to raise up and ultimately make more money, because that's basically why we all go to work, is to have some form of living. You either have to work harder and harder to become the best at a thing, become the best repair person for a type of equipment or a modality, or be the best plumber or electrician or whatever the trades that you're in. And in our case, Biomed, whether it's your goal to become an imaging technician or the best liaison to IT for the Biomed networks, whatever it is, that is a way to raise your value. Just keep getting better and better. Go to more schools, go to more trainings, read more, tinker more, be more adventurous with your repairs, be open-minded, or take on more responsibility from a leadership perspective and or management. One of those avenues is the project management side. I've seen a big push out of the Airmark was starting it. Trimedics definitely already had a good program and took the Airmark program way further down the road. I know GE has their hand in it, but the management of assets has become its own industry. So there are whole departments and divisions within these companies where you can start to get into project management, implementation, purchase and implementation of the medical equipment, or just asset management in general for capital cycles, things like that. Or you raise your hand to manage the people. Lead tech, tech 1, 2, 3, become a lead tech, become a supervisor, become a manager, director, so on and so forth. And that I chose to raise my hand in the leadership route and keep trying to be in charge of more and more leadership items. But recognizing what your skill set is, what's your superpower, what's your special thing that you're the best at, where are you most comfortable, where do you have to not try, and then just keep tunneling into that. And also, realize I had to move my family and my home, and that's a lot of people's story. I only had to move 90 minutes. I didn't leave my state, but you still had to sell a house, buy a house, re-enroll in schools, find new friends, all those types of things. So that's a paralleling issue, is you can't just stay at the same hospital or the same third-party company forever and expect to just get lucky, because Sulab used to tell me this thing because I was impatient so bad. This is how he used to calm me down. And he used to just say, sometimes the person is ready before the company. And that's what we would say when we either had to encourage somebody to leave, or somebody would come to us and tell us they were leaving and they were a great technician or a great operator or a great manager. But sometimes you end up on a young killer team and you're ready to do more, and then nobody's moving anywhere. So you have to leave the company and find your next opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. The further we go down this path in healthcare technology management is the integration between IT, facilities, and Biomed, and then construction and planning. So do you find that in your industry where you're at now, and through your experience, that is something that you can transition to easily? Or is that something that, you just got lucky?
So when it comes to management, that has more to do with why I was able to transition over to the facility side. I don't think, because you're not going to take a BMET 2 or 3 and then go be a plumber 2. Like, that's not how that works. But the manager of Biomed is arguably able to, if you have the right skill sets and be open-minded, that the manager of Biomed could come over and manage the plumbers. And that's what I did. And it was, you're still managing service, you're still managing widgets, you're still managing the men and women that take care of those widgets, you're still managing the sales rep that sells you those widgets, you're still managing the capital cycle within the healthcare system to purchase those widgets. So that was very transferable, and service is service. There's a customer, there's a product that's doing a thing for the customer, and there's the guys that you manage to fix those things, and there's the people that you buy those things from. That doesn't change in any industry. It's the same in IT, it's the same in biomed, it's the same in facilities.
I like that transferable skill set. What was important in your education to get you where you are today? Was there certain classes? Did you take it in management, or what did you do with your education?
I don't like school at all. Like I said, I transferred from high school to college with 12 or 13 credits already in electronics, so it placed me in advanced electronics immediately. I got through college as quick as I could. So no, I didn't take a single extra management class. I didn't go back for my bachelor's. I mean, you're looking at that's the degree right there, Associates in Applied Science. That's as far as I got, and I stopped. I think the overarching, all the pieces come together to teach you to troubleshoot. And if you're going to stay in the service industry, troubleshooting is the backbone of all of it. You're troubleshooting different things. And in biomed, I mean, geez, oh Pete, think about all the different things that go wrong in biomed. You have electricity being broken down to tiny circuit boards and super sensitive pieces of equipment, all the way up to big imaging pieces of equipment using the highest voltage that you can put into a machine with the most sensitivities, interferences, worrying about frequencies. You have Wi-Fi, you have Bluetooth, you have LAN connections, and then you have all the way down to sterilizers, where all of a sudden you're out there trying to recruit some ex-Navy guy who had super good steam training, because if you don't understand steam, you can't work on the sterilizer. But you also need to understand all the other facility things on top of how sterilizers are supposed to be actually working for the central sterile or SPD department. And then you also have to be able to make sure those machines are communicating, and you have to look at what they're telling you to figure out atmospheric pressures and dry times and how to pull a vacuum with a Venturi effect. So you have like a wild scope that you could get into in biomed. So yeah, after 15 years, I had just seen enough things that you can transition that into other things. And reporting to IT was another big helper. So I spent a good portion of my time reporting to IT. So I would go to IT director meetings. All my management-based stuff was around IT. So I was constantly hearing these guys, and now I'm learning about networks and VLANs and going in the data center and being in awe of like all the switches and servers and thinking about how Wi-Fi is affected and all the things you complain about as a general employee, like, oh, IT this, IT that. I got to see the backside. I'm like, oh, it's a little tougher actually than I thought. And maybe I should cut those guys some slack. And then the more you learn about all the adjacent spaces, oh, I see how hard it is for the facility guy to give me clean, dry steam. A lot of things have to go right. Oh, I see how hard it is for the electricians to make sure that the monthly generator test doesn't blip all my medical equipment and screw up all my patient monitors or my x-ray or my MRI. You get this appreciation for all the things that go into making a hospital run, and that you can take with you to almost any industry and be an effective team member wherever you go.
I like that. All the things that go into making a hospital run. There are a lot of things, right?
It's enormous.
So something I want to jump back to is you talked about mentors that you've had in your life. Mentorship. I think it's so important. How does one find a mentor? Are they out there still in today's age, or is everyone just too busy?
So they still exist. They always will exist. It's how are you at identifying them, and how are you at waiting for them? I've learned you cannot force it. I also realized I was really lucky early in my career. I got back to back to back 3 times in a row, amazing mentors, and never had a break. I am somewhat in a period now, and have been for a while, where I don't think I'm taking as direct input, like, and maybe that just happens eventually with your age. Maybe you just get to a point in your career. I don't know if it has to do with your level of operation or your age or your experience or a meld of all those words, but you also have to be okay with saying, I'm going to base this off of my instincts and everything I have learned up until now, until I find the next person who's ready to pull me into the next thing and tell me where my shortcomings are and coach me there. I used to give the IT intern group a tour of the hospital every year because I had learned it from being behind the scenes so much. I knew all the nooks and crannies. One of my speeches that I would give them ties right into your question, and I would tell them, find mentors. And I say plural because it's dangerous to say I want to be a person, because you can't. You can never be another person. You will never have their story, their upbringing. You can't listen to this podcast as an 18-year-old and do my exact thing if you're not already 3 years into medical equipment and 2 years into electronics. You can't repeat my story unless you're already doing that. So go find someone that has the job you want. Go find somebody that has the marriage or relationship that you want. Go find somebody who's good at the thing you want to be good at and leech them for that specific thing. You need a myriad of people in your life to get you to where you want to go. And what I found, and what continues to be true and will always be true, when you find a person who is good at a thing, it's because it comes natural to them, or they've worked really hard and have a lot of tricks, one or the other. Either way, they will be excited to impart everything and anything they know about that topic, that subject, into you. They will give you all their knowledge, tell you every story, spend as much time as they possibly can with you if you show interest in the thing that they're good at. Because ask yourself, what am I good at? Okay, name it. I'm good at painting. This is not true, but let's say I'm good at painting. If somebody comes to me and says, can you tell me everything you know about painting and how to be a good painter? I'm going to pour out everything. I'm going to tell them the paints I use, the brushes I use, who I learned from, what books I buy, what podcasts I listen to, what school I went to, what stores are my favorite, what art fair I go to every year. And just take that little nugget of information, open your eyes and say, I want to be X, Y, and Z, and go find those people that are around you. They're around you. And don't be afraid to trade up, like when you've met your mentor from a knowledge, capability, production perspective, that's okay. If you're on a rocket ship, if you're trying to rise fast and you're working really, really hard, don't be afraid to leapfrog and grab that next vine and swing to the next mentor. And that's important for growth. I see a lot of people, it can be uncomfortable when all of a sudden you no longer are learning as much as you were from your mentor that you were, especially if it's your boss, right? I was fortunate that almost every time it's been one of my leaders, but there's a fine line. You have to stay respectful, but also understand that the whole goal is to replace them. And if you have a good mentor and it's in a leadership perspective, they're trying to make sure that you can replace them, whether it's not there. Remember, sometimes you're ready before the company and you have to leave, as I said earlier, but that's what you can't be afraid of. Your goal is to get as good as the person that you found in the first place. Why did they inspire you to become your mentor? Why were you attracted to them? You have to self-reflect and say, okay, I think I'm there. Maybe it's time to start opening my eyes for the next level I'm trying to achieve, and raise your hand and create those inroads. You have to make those relationships.
Yeah, it's an active action of wanting more, right? To grow, to learn, to advance. I see a lot of complacency at times and people wanting something, but it's an adjective, right? Finding, seeking, desiring to improve yourself, or also as a mentor, looking for those that you think you can inspire.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a great joke with Jeff Ruiz, and when he introduced me to the Aramark program and encouraged me to apply, and I ultimately got that job working in the organization. We weren't working together. We were at different hospitals. His wife, now hilariously, but his wife said, one day you're going to work for him. And it was just crazy to think, because Jeff took me in as a kid without a driver's license. And here we are, it was going on 7-8 years later. I'm in the field. I did everything he told me to. And his wife made that assumption. And then fast forward to 2019, when I reassumed 2020, when I got the Biomed program put back under me. one of the first things that happened is we brought Jeff into Sparrow, and ultimately his contract was reporting to me. So the prophecy came true from Jeff's wife, and we still have really, really good laughs about it. And it just ended up being really funny. But that's just to show you, like, my very first mentor in life, his story is different. He came from a different place. He has different desires. He's comfortable in different ways than I'm comfortable with where he's at and what he's doing. And he likes to focus his time on other things than I do. I was trying to ride that rocket ship to the top and wanted more and more leadership and kept raising my hand for that leadership. And that's what it resulted in. And it couldn't be better. It was never awkward. It was never good. And that has a lot to do with owning your relationships and making sure that you right the wrongs. And when you know somebody for 17 years, and especially when you look up to them so hard, me and Jeff don't agree on everything. We didn't get perfectly along 100% of the time, but at the end of the day, he was my person, and we were perfectly fine in the reverse roles because he made me, so I know I don't have to tell him how to do his job, and we just used each other like the the conduits and catalysts that we were for what we were trying to achieve. He became in charge of the Biomed program that I once ran in that building, and I knew I didn't have to worry about a single thing, and he was likely going to do that better than me because he cared about Biomed more than I did at the end of the day. Seeing as how I had left. If I really was super, super passionate about Biomed, I wouldn't have left the field and gone adjacent to it, obviously. But I cared about having a good program, and I cared about being the best level 1 trauma center in town. I cared about taking care of our nurses and our nurse managers and our doctors and our C-suite and making sure that we were the safest, best program you could possibly have around. And that combination came to life because of relationships and mentorships.
I think we need to have Jeff on as a guest and do a podcast on success and mentorship. I mean, you're a great example.
Yeah, he would crush it. Absolutely.
And, I think that's a call to maybe you being a mentor now. Maybe it's your turn to start sharing and mentoring someone that you see potential in. I know I just got a call the other day and wanted to ask more about, what I do and how I do it. And I said, you know what, let's get together. Let's get your people together and let's have a talk. I'll help you. And they asked, how much does it cost? I said, it costs nothing. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to help mentor. And just giddy as happy as can be. And the phone calls and the text, I'm so excited and so blessed to say that somebody looks up to me. So now maybe it's your turn, Bev.
Yeah, and I've had some good mini escapades. I've had some, I like to jokingly refer to them as prodigies. So I tell Jeff I was his prodigy. And it's tougher because I went to a smaller field, technically. It's not as big in the people perspective. At the hospital, we had 8,500 employees, obviously not all in the same building and all at the same time, but it was big. I only have a couple hundred employees and only 10 or so in my office now. But absolutely, I'm constantly looking for it. And that's why I jump at chances to share information like this. The invitation to join you on the podcast was a no-brainer because the more that we can encourage people and show that there are stories out there that you don't have to have a doctorate, to achieve your goals, and you can work your way from the bottom to the top and send that message about, how important it is to raise your hand and give that information on how to find mentors. I think that's super, super important. And maybe you've inspired me to pick up the microphone again and start working on it and give some
nice. I like that. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of our podcast. It's been such a pleasure having you on. And I really want to encourage folks to, I'm going to say right now, I'm going to put them on the spot. Bill's available. If you have a question, shoot him an email, shoot him a LinkedIn message. That's how we got connected, and ask him. And maybe he'll have somebody in your area. Maybe he'll know another leader that'd be willing to mentor you where you're at and the space you're in. I think Biomed, you got to remember that when you come in as an electronic technician to work on medical devices, there is a huge world of opportunity out there for you. And it's all about finding those mentors and doing what feels right for you. With that said, Bill, we always close with our wow. our words of wisdom. So I'd like you to depart our guest with whatever you like to let them hang their hat on, that little nugget of information.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll first say what I always said to the IT interns that I always ended the tour with this is enjoy your internship, but keep your eyes wide open and pay attention to what we just looked at. And obviously I didn't just walk these guests around a hospital, but most of them probably have been in one. And what I would tell them is, before you go ahead and sign on, if Sparrow offers you a job, or if you think you're going to look to another hospital or healthcare system for a job, remember that you can do IT anywhere. And so I'll say this, lots of people need electronics or repair technicians, lots of industries. There are, especially today, everything becomes more and more electronically driven. Remember, if you're signing up to be a biomed or if you're signing up to work in healthcare, it is a 24/7 life-dependent operation. If you are signing up for this, we don't get paid more money. We work more hours than anybody else. We probably have more stress than other industries, but our reward is much, much higher. You get to be responsible for the equipment or the programs or the systems that saved a life, kept a life, sustained a life, rehabbed a life, whatever you want to say. That, if that appeals to you, then you should probably entertain becoming a healthcare employee and pursuing biomed. If through your internship you're thinking about that, or if you're already a biomed and you don't have that in you, you don't fully feel that those words, that you don't think that you matter, or you don't think that you're making that kind of impact, you should probably consider whether or not healthcare is the right spot for you, because the whole world has jobs full of technician areas and you can pursue those. But I'll tell you right now, there is no shortage for passionate people in our industry. And if you get in and you raise your hand, fill the hole. If you see a hole, fill it and let somebody know what you came up with, what your solution was. And when you get known to be a solution person, you will rise to the ranks faster than you could ever imagine.
I love that. Be a solution person. Wow. I really, that hits home. That really does, Bill. Well, thank you guys for tuning in again to HTM Insider. Please share this. If you listen through TechNation, you do get a CEU credit for this episode. You have to log in, sign in, fill out the information. You can find us on any place you listen to your podcast. Be sure to like and comment it. And if you want to get hold of Bill or myself for more information on where you can find a mentor, our door is open. So thank you again for joining us. See you next episode.
Thank you, Bill, for a great presentation. If you enjoyed today's episode, you might enjoy our ongoing webinar series, Webinar Wednesday. You can find a calendar of upcoming live webinars, as well as an archive of on-demand webinars at webinarwednesday.live. To obtain your certificate for 1 CE credit from the ACI, please remember to click the link located below this podcast title to complete today's survey. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com.